Now, this is a really interesting story because he is backing the growing calls for descendants of slave traders from the UK to pay significant reparations to right historical wrongs. He's demanding that those involved in the transatlantic slave trade be posthumously charged for crimes against humanity.
This is a big topic at the moment. It's being discussed around the world. Ghanaian President Mohamed Irfan Ali joins us live now from New York, where he's going to be addressing world leaders at the UN General Assembly on this subject later today. So we've got in early with you. OK, let me ask you a question, Mr. President, on behalf of all of our viewers who would be covered by this. Why should somebody who maybe had an ancestor 7 or 8 generations ago, long before they were a twinkle in their great-great-great-great-grandparents' eye, why should they have to pay now for what an ancient ancestor did? Or why should they apologise for what an ancestor did centuries ago? Why do they still carry that burden?
Oh, it's not a burden at all. You are one of the beneficiaries of that slave trade. So this is not a burden. You should be concerned and you should pay because you today are still benefiting from the greatest indignity to a human being, and that is the slave trade. And not only did you benefit during the slave trade and your country developed, but look at what it caused the developing world. During slavery, resources was used to build your country, build up your capacity. You were able to then become competitive. You were able to invest in mechanization, and developing countries like ours were left behind. So you should be very concerned because you are a prime beneficiary of the exploits of slavery.
So put a figure on it, please, because it always comes down to the bottom line. How much should an individual taxpayer in a country like the UK be signing a cheque to a country like yours, Ghana?
Well, it's easy to calculate. We can use the time value of money. You can look at the period of slavery and the contribution well, not the contribution, the extraction of wealth from countries like ours and how it was utilized to build your society, build your country, create wealth in your country, and then add the time value of money, and you will get the value. There's a lot of research paper on this. A lot of universities would have done paper on this. There's enough literature to tell us what that value is. But I want to say that it is not only the value, it is the loss of time. It is a loss of competitiveness. It is a loss of human dignity. It is a loss of our education system. It is the culture that we lost. It is all of this indignity that surrounded slavery that we must consider.
I just wonder, people will be wondering what, you explain that there are calculations, but are you able to say in what measure that would be? I mean, are we talking billions, millions? What would you expect the payout to be and over what period of time? Well,
you know, this year in Guyana, we commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Demerara Rebellion. And it took 200 years to get an apology from one of the families. I don't believe that you would want us to wait 200 years for reparative justice and for us to take this conversation forward. CARICOM would have set out a 10-point plan on what should constitute reparative justice and what should constitute reparation. And the calculation goes into billions for the region.
How far back, though, do we have to go on this? Because you make the point, we're talking exclusively here about Western imperialistic slavery, to summarise it. But almost every civilization on the planet owes its existence and its prosperity almost always to crimes in the past, be they aggressive wars, be they different forms of slavery involving different movements of population. You can go right back to the Greeks and the Romans. Why just target one particular era in history? Some would say that's the arguments of political convenience. It's a handy handle to hang your argument on.
I think you're doing a great injustice to compare slavery with any other of the historical facts that you're mentioning.
I was including other forms of slavery.
It's
No, but
doing
I was,
a
I was
great
including
injustice
other
to the
examples of slavery as well.
To the indignity that slavery brought to people. That is the first thing. And I'll give you an example. Coming on to your program a few moments ago, you were speaking about net zero and climate justice. We are speaking about, the world is speaking today about climate justice and compensation and how we address the issues of climate change. And this is the problem. We live in a very unjust society. You know, we condemn completely the war in Ukraine. But if you look at the mobilization of resources in the war in Ukraine, in 2 years, you have mobilized more support for Ukraine than we have mobilized for Haiti for 60 years. You have mobilized more support for Ukraine than we have mobilized for Palestine for 20 years. You have mobilized more support for Ukraine in just 1.5 years than we mobilized to address the issue of hunger in Africa for 3 years. And that is the type of, unjust way we have been dealing with these crises. And we are not going to tolerate the injustice that occurred during slavery to be compared with any other system. Slavery, we all agree, was the greatest injustice ever done to human beings. So we should not ever try to compare this to any other system.
No.
There is no other system that has created greater injustice than slavery and indignity to humankind in slavery.
President Ali, I wonder if I can talk to you about another issue. In fact, you raise it there. Guyana discovered crude oil in 2015, and by some accounts, that makes your country the world's fastest growing economy and will be one of the largest per capita oil producers in the world by 2030. What responsibility do you feel now as an oil producer amidst the warnings of climate catastrophe?
Well, it is not what responsibility we feel now. It is the responsibility we have always held close to us. We have a forest the size of England and Scotland combined, with the lowest deforestation rate in the world at 0.036%. The entire forest is R3 certified, quality carbon, and this has been standing there forever. The question is, what has the world done with that standing forest? Is the forest worth more dead or alive? So these are the questions. So we have always been a part of the answer. And although we are a newcomer to the petroleum industry and the oil producing industry, we have said very clearly that we support the removal of subsidy on exploration and we support a carbon tax. We also said that we support a balanced approach. And coming on this program, I heard that we are going to go back on some of the policies in the UK on petroleum and EVs and so on.
Yeah.
So what is the balanced approach?
Okay,
the balanced approach is how do we get the petroleum company around the table? This cannot be, we cannot go into COP28 with two extreme ends.
All right,
Everyone needs to be around the table so we can have commitment from all the stakeholders.
OK, Mr. President, you make that clear very briefly now, because we're over time here. I know you've got to go and we've got to move on as well. But very briefly, coming back to where we came in, one of the points you're going to be making today is about our royal family. And you feel that it's not just about the finances involved here in terms of reparations for slavery, it's about the gestures. And you think that the British royal family should make a big gesture, don't you? What do you mean? Hand over a palace to your country?
Well, no, we don't want the British to hand over a palace that we built. You know, if you go into many of the palaces in Britain, you will see the lovely green heartwood from Guyana. You will see the sweat, tears, and blood of the slaves who were exploited.
So what do you want?
And the revenue that was earned from their exploitation. So we're not asking for a palace. We're asking for justice and a fair form of justice to the ancestors and to the greatest injustice that has ever being done to human beings.
We look forward to
We're not asking for palaces. You can enjoy the palace, and when we visit you, we'll also enjoy it.
Mr. President, we really look forward to your speech later on today to the UN. I'm sure there'll be much coughing and shuffling of feet, because when it comes to getting people to put their hands in their back pockets, you've got a mountain to climb. But